I'm Melanie Esslinger, and I'm here as part of the Study Abroad Office, and we get to collaborate with the library a few times each semester in helping really emphasize student stories. And so we're really excited to be part of this ongoing initiative with the VU Library. Prime Time is really set up to help feature students, staff, faculty, and really just the different learning that happens inside and outside of the classroom. If you enjoy primetime programming, you can become a member of the Friends of the Library, and more information is on the library's website. You can also find archived recordings of past presentations as well. Coming up next week, Tuesday, April 3rd at 11:15, Dr. Sean Dickers of the Education Department will present on how he has developed differential learning techniques in his classroom. But today, we are excited to welcome Rachel Land. She's a junior social studies major, and she's going to share a GPS, which is the global perspective of students, and talk about her time studying abroad in Uganda. So, welcome, Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Let me get this situated. Like she said, my name is Rachel, and I went to Uganda and studied abroad there for the last 4 months, so in the fall semester. And so, yeah, I'll get started. This is an overview. I'm going to go through that. There's 11 slides, so if you're counting down what's over, there's 11 of them. Who even am I? Hi. I'm a junior. Like she said, double majoring in history and social studies education. What do I like to do? Sing all the time. If you know me, it's annoying. I like anything that pertains to music. I like to snowboard. I love outdoor anything. And I like to run really long distances at really slow paces. And I love people. So, yeah, and then I'm from Nut Lake, Minnesota, which is like a town of 200 in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Why did I go? Obviously, to learn how to kill a chicken. So, actually why I went was my first year here, I was really struggling in a lot of different areas. I was struggling with my faith, specifically. I was struggling with relationships. I kind of actually had a culture shock when coming to Bethel. It was a culture different from my home culture, and it wasn't one that I really enjoyed right away. And I was really excited to come to Bethel. I was really excited I thought it'd be the perfect thing for my faith, for just like growing in my friendships, and it ended up being really, really hard my first year. I had a hard time connecting with people that were really going to push me towards Christ, and so I really struggled. And I'm also a theology nut, so I love to just dig into the nitty-gritty of like what my faith is and what I believe. And I did a lot of that my freshman year, and to the point where it was actually kind of unhealthy, and I started to just have these extreme doubts that just would overflow everything in my mind, and it was not good. And I remember just by the end of freshman year not really being at a place where I believed in God, or that there was a God, or just everything. I started literally looking into different religions, just looking for something that was solid. And I grew up as a pastor's kid. So for me to question these things was kind of like, how dare you? Like, I felt in my heart, I felt like for me, like, how dare you, to myself, like, question this, and how dare you doubt this? And so that was really hard. So I struggled with Bethel. And honestly, I went to the study abroad thing, and I was like, okay, I just need to get out of here. And so I went to the table and found a little thing on Uganda. It was like the most exotic place to go. And it was like, cool, send me there. It's just not the right reasons in any way, but it's fine. And yeah, they also, it's not even for a major, it's for social work majors. And I am not a social work major. I have so much respect for social work majors, but I am not one. And so I was just like, yeah, cool, I'll go. And yeah. So briefly, I'll get back to that, but what was USP, Uganda Studies Program? It takes place in a small town of Mukono in Uganda, and it's probably double the size of Bethel, USP is, or no, just kidding, UCU is double the size of Bethel, and USP is the small group of American students who come to study abroad there. And the year that I went, it was all women, which was awesome. So there's 20 of us, women living in close quarters, which is, really fun. And yeah, so it was just like a tiny little niche inside of the massive UCU. And the reason why we were kind of separate was not because we didn't like the beautiful Ugandan people, it was simply just because the grading scales were different, the teaching styles were different, so much was different since we were only there for 4 months. It was easier just to do our own programs in our own little section. But we were able to like hang out with the kids, and half of us were homestay students and half of us were on campus. And so the on-campus students lived in the dorms with these other students. So one thing that I assumed coming in was that it was going to be like a desert, like I think Africa and I think desert. I had no knowledge of Africa, which is embarrassing, but it's not desert. It's very tropical and very beautiful, and there was monkeys everywhere and fruit, and it was cool. And so yeah, it's a very nice campus, very large. Like I said, double the size of Bethel. This is us. And the first 2 weeks were spent with these guys and getting to know them, and yeah, wow, I love them so much. And just our friendships have still continued, and it's been really awesome. I'm in the middle with dreadlocks. I did have dreads for a little bit, which is cool. They came out right away. Yeah, so upon first arriving, the first thing we did was get to know them, and then we went to live with our host family for 3 days before heading to Rwanda. And I'll talk about Rwanda a little bit more. But the first thing we did was go for 3 days to live with our host family, and they taught us how to do laundry, how to pee in a pit latrine, literally. Like, they gave us step-by-step instructions. Step over the hole. We needed it. We're like these spoiled American kids who have never had to go through these kinds of things before, and how to bathe out of a bucket. And like, they were very gracious and very humble in teaching. And so I really appreciate that. So this looks really nice and aesthetically pleasing, but laundry was not nice or aesthetically pleasing. It was like a day-long endeavor, and it was, yeah. But yeah, so terrified and overwhelmed, my feelings coming in, I was just like, I'm about to go live with this family, and I don't know them, and my culture is so different. I was like afraid to say anything because I didn't want to like offend, and I quickly found out that they were like, they love to laugh, and they would always laugh at me if I did say something offensive and didn't know it. Like, they're so gracious and so able to just be like, yeah, it's okay, like, we got you, and we're gonna teach you everything. New foods, my mom was an amazing chef, but often the meals looked a lot like this. So this is like G-nuts, this is like peanuts made into a sauce, and then like this weird collard green mush, which you learn to love it. And then a lot of carbs, but yeah, it was good. Eventually. It was good, kind of good for you. Anyways, moving on. Rwanda. So then we went, took a van, a lot of hours to Rwanda, and we were there to study the genocide. And how many of you guys have any knowledge of or around the genocide at all that happened in 1994? Okay, cool. So y'all are better than me, because I had no clue going into this what this was, and was therefore utterly shocked and by what it was. And so for those of you who don't know, just a little bit of a crash course. There's been a lot of tribal warfare in Rwanda over the last 60 years. And so this tribal warfare was one tribe oppressing the other, and then there would be a coup, and then the other tribe would oppress the other, and it was just this continued. This is a very, very brief summary, so if you're interested, please go look into it more. That summary doesn't do it justice. But that's, and then finally in 1994, the Hutu, which was the tribe in power, were terrified that the Tutsi, the tribe that was not in power, was going to take control of the government, but not only take control of the government, but actually kill them. And so they were like, if we don't kill them, if we don't take them out entirely, they will take us out. So in 1994, this exploded into a massive massacre, a genocide, and it was the most efficient genocide that has happened in modern history. It was in the streets. Over the period of 100 days, 800,000 people were murdered, utterly and completely brutally. And this is a kind of graphic picture, but this kind of gives you an idea. People were trading in their semi-automatic weapons for machetes because they wanted to inflict the most amount of pain on the people, because there was just this building hatred and over many, many years. And it was from both sides, but the Hutu did the massacre at the end. And then, so we came to Rwanda, and they threw us right into this. And they said, okay, we're going to learn about this, and we're going to take you to a memorial. And so we walked into this church. The first place we went was this church. And the door had been blown off by a grenade, and we walked in, and the walls were covered in bullet marks, and grenade, like shrapnel marks, and covered in blood. Everything was covered in dry blood, and the linens in the front of the church were no longer white, and they had clothing laid out over the pews. And it was extremely graphic, and it felt like it happened a week ago. It felt like we were walking into a war zone that happened a week ago. This is over 20 years ago. But they left it as it was, just so, I mean, obviously they removed bodies, but they left it how it was, just to prove a point, like, humans are capable of this, and no one's above this, and we need to remember what happened. So that's kind of what we learned. And at this point of my faith, I came into Uganda quite atheist, actually. I still had, like I said, I'm a theology nut, so I had like this notebook full of reasons why like God doesn't exist and why He can't exist, and I hadn't really shared it with anyone besides my like close atheist friends, because I just didn't know how to bring it to my Christian friends. And I had actually started closing out some of my closest Christian friends just because I didn't know how to relate to them anymore. And that was terrifying, because when it's been something you've believed your whole life and all of a sudden you can't believe it anymore because of whatever reason, and Satan had such a grip on my doubt and made it so very in my mind and in my face, and I couldn't get away from it. And so seeing this was like reiteration of that. It's like, there's no God. There's no way that this can happen if there's a God. There's no way that God would let. Rwanda was a majority Christian nation before this happened and after. The fact that this happened in a majority Christian nation blew my mind. Like, why is that a thing? How come God didn't stop that? So I had a lot of anger and bitterness, and so at the end of this, I was really, really angry after seeing the church. And that night, our director came in to see us, and we were all kind of going through our own grieving processes of like understanding what we just saw. And it was very traumatic. I was pretty much numb and angry. Our director came in, and he's like, okay, tomorrow we're gonna go to a reconciliation center. And I was like, are you kidding me? You're gonna tell me that you are gonna try to reconcile something like someone killing this boy's entire family? He's nothing left. And you're gonna tell him that he needs to forgive the person who did that to him. That was what was going through my mind, just kind of like, how dare you? Like, who do you think you are? So this is also some of the scars and things that we saw on people in Rwanda these years later, and I was like, I'm not ready to forgive them. I don't know how you can ask them to forgive that, and I don't think that there's a God who can heal something like that. So we went to this reconciliation center, and they showed us this documentary, and I have these little handouts afterwards. If you want one, you can come and get one from me. But they have this documentary on it, if you want to know more about Rwanda or the reconciliation center. But anyways, they showed us this documentary about these people, the perpetrators and victims, who actually, over the course of years, had befriended each other. And as they grew closer to each other, they actually were able to fully reconcile. And there was a brotherly bond. And I can say this, but like, to really experience this, we walked in and like, these people, we actually got to meet them. And the first time I saw them, they invited them to the front of the stage, and this perpetrator was standing there, and I didn't know this at the time, but he was standing next to a woman who was covered in machete scars. She was having a hard time walking. He was helping her to the front of the stage. He was the man who had done that to her. And he was the one who had killed her entire family. And just that love, and that it was so real. It was like, I was shocked because I couldn't deny that this was in front of me and very genuine and very real, and this was not just forgiveness, this was reconciliation. And they came to the front of the stage and told their story. They're like, please ask us questions, we want to tell you about the power of the Holy Spirit. And I was like, no way, like kind of mind blown, and like honestly like so thankful. I was like relieved. It was like some proof, like tangible evidence of the Holy Spirit in my life. And I was just like, no way. And we got to meet them and talk to them. Here's a picture of this is a perpetrator and a victim, and kind of this is the kind of things we saw there. And you guys, I can't even begin to explain what it was like to see this. It was unreal. I still had so much doubt, but I could not deny the Holy Spirit in that moment. So this kind of leads into academics. So these are the 4 courses that I took. These 2 were required, and Faith in Action was the first one. And kind of why I did this right after was just because Faith in Action was really, really crucial to coming back from Rwanda and learning how to apply what we saw and kind of talk through what we saw. And we read a lot of incredible books that I'll reference a few times, and I have a list of all of them. So if you really want to know more, come see me once again. It's all on this little cute piece of paper. So Faith in Action, we started talking about like these kinds of doubts and things. And they had just created this environment at this college where we could just talk about these things. It was so open. It was like all that gray area that you struggle with in your faith. And for me as a pastor's kid, like I had known the Bible, I know these things, I know like theology, but like I have questions, but I feel afraid to come to people about them because I know they're kind of sketchy. Like, why would you ask that, or why would you go there? And they took down those boundaries and said, like, come and we'll talk about these things. And it was as if they took my notebook of doubts that I talked about earlier, the very reasons why God doesn't exist, and they made them the curriculum for the reasons why God does exist. So fully, and word for word, I remember leaving class in tears of relief so many times just because I couldn't deny it anymore. It was like God was like, I love you so much that I'm not gonna let you doubt me. I don't have to prove myself to you, but I'm going to because I know that's what you need to see, and I know I don't have to, but I'm going to because I love you. And just that realization was like so really, guys. Oh, I don't know. I still get chills just thinking about it, but it's cool. So cross-cultural practicum, I'll talk about that a little bit later too. And then these last two, history of East Africa and politics of East Africa, that was cool. Those were taught by Ugandan professors, and I love history and politics, so that was cool. And at the time, like, Uganda is very peaceful, but there is a lot of political, like, strife just because, like, their president's been in power for 30 years and they can't get rid of him, kind of things. Like, so to have these classes at the same time was really helpful in understanding. Once again, these are the girls. These are the medical, there was 10 medical students there, which was cool. They got to really be involved in, like, births and, like, really helping out with the community. So, I mean, if you guys are looking at studying abroad and you're medical, go to Uganda. Plug. Then this is all of us general studies students who were there for no reason at all except that we wanted to go to Uganda. And this is us eating chapati, which is amazing bread thing that is really bad for you. And we got chapati bodies from them. That was the running joke. Practicum. So this is me and John. John is our driver. John Kabugo, we call him that because he'd always say that. He'd talk about himself in third person, like, John Kabugo. It was the funniest thing. He was great. And just a good person to talk to and from practicum. But my practicum was at Off-To Mission, which was like an orphanage, but not. It was an orphanage that didn't put kids up for adoption ever. They were taken from the streets, raised, and then often in Uganda, the culture is very communal. So like the way that we look at adoptions, we're saving this kid from being alone in life. Well, actually in Uganda, a lot of the adoption agencies, the parents will put the child up for adoption just so they know they can get a good life that they can't afford. So the parents are putting the kids up for adoption because they love them and not because they've abandoned them. And so that was something we saw, and so this mission knew that, and so basically they would raise the child, put the child through school, and then give them back to their communities, and really help them actually strengthen their own communities. And so it was so cool to be able to work there. And then Off-To Academy is where I spent most of my time. I was working alongside primary school teachers, and I'm not a primary school, I'm a high school person. I don't know how to say that. I do secondary education, that's my major, and not primary, so I was very overwhelmed by all these little children running around, which is fine. I got used to it and learned I really loved the kids at the end. It was so cool. But I got to work alongside these really amazing teachers who knew a lot about the culture and were very, once again, gracious with me, as I did not. And they taught me about their own cultures, and yeah, if anything they taught me, go for it. It's okay to fail. Often they would have me come talk about a subject that was you want me to talk for how long about what? I don't even know what that is. And they were you know what, just go for it, and if you don't know, don't be afraid to just say that. And so that was cool. Learned a lot from them. My host family, I could talk about them all day long. So I wasn't actually very comfortable with them for 2 months. I was terrified to really come out of my comfort zone with them, just because I didn't understand so many things, and there was a language barrier, but they were, like I said, so gracious. This is my brother Shem. We're still very close to this day. We talk on a weekly, monthly basis now. But we did dishes together. That was our thing. So after dinner, we'd come and he would just teach me how to do dishes. You had to pull in water, come and bring water, and we didn't have running water. And you had to show me how to if fish leave a very distinctive scent on plates. So we'd take branches from outside and a certain way of rubbing it. It was so cool. He had all these awesome things that he taught me. Anyways, so we got really close because of that. We spent a couple hours every day just hanging out. Judith, my little sister, she's 15. So amazing. She's very musically and inclined. She's very skilled in music, and so it was fun to hang out with her because we really connected on that. And then she's also very articulate, could speak really well, and it was cool to just to know her because she really struggled in school. I think she's dyslexic. They didn't have diagnosis for those kinds of things, but just by the end I realized that I think she was dyslexic, but how articulate she was and how amazing at singing, and I was just like, you know what, this God has got some incredible things planned for this girl in her life. So she was awesome. That's her typical face, just so joyful. Like, oh, it's great. This is my mama. We would put these gomezis on. So they're called. They're like the typical like African wear. For a wedding, and we went to a 12-hour wedding that day. I kid you not, the longest I've ever sat in a chair. It was gnarly, not fun. So, but anyways, that was my mom. We got really close. This is her .com pose, we caught it. She's like, this is my .com pose. It was so funny. It was great. But more about Mama, she became a rock for me. These are just words that describe her and what she has become to me. She is incredible. She raised 18 children, and her husband passed away right after the last one was born. And so she was there raising 18 children by herself. That in and of itself is a feat, let alone in a third world country where you're scrapping to find food for your kids. And she told me, I was like, how did you do it, Mama? And she was like, you know what? I just gave them to God. And I was like, God, these are not my kids. You could raise them without me here. And I know that, and I'm therefore surrendering them to you. And you guys, all but 2 graduated with bachelor's degrees. 8 of them received master's degrees, and 2 received PhDs. God's cool. That's all I got. She's so incredible. And she taught me so much about homemaking and what it means to be a hostess and what it means to be hospitable to people and just kind of like show your vulnerability to people in your space that is your home. And she taught me, like, even if you're like a crappy cook, like, or you just really aren't good at talking to people, just the act of being like, hey, this is me, come eat my crappy cooking, like, or whatever. Like, it's okay, just show your vulnerabilities to people and how God can use that camaraderie and that community in such amazing ways. So kind of to wrap up what I learned, so I'm not really talking a lot through the logistics of study abroad, but mostly just my experiences because it's so different for everybody. But anyways, learning the hard way, some things that I learned along the way, don't assume, you'll be wrong. I assumed a lot about the culture coming in, about Africa, about the fact that I thought it was a desert everywhere. Like, come on, look at a map. It's not that hard to figure out that's not the case. But I didn't know. But just like assuming that like if you live in a third world country, you're probably not very intelligent. That was definitely something that I had floating around in my head, and I didn't even realize it until coming to meet people and being surprised and like shocked at myself for being surprised at their own intelligence, and just kind of like, oh wow, like realizing how ignorant I was. And so anytime you go into a culture, a different space, don't assume. Go in saying, okay, these people are created in the image of God, same as everyone else in this world, and I need to come in fully, be able to acknowledge that. And I met so many incredible, intelligent people, and often like the reason why they're in poverty is because of corruption, is because of so many different factors that are far beyond. Like, we are so blessed and privileged here in America to not have nearly any of the problems that they do, and they're still thriving. Like, they're very, very intelligent. Basically, I had a lot of assumptions that got blown out of the window. Water.
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks, Mom. That's my
Yeah,
mom.
sure.
So, number 2, I learned to be real and be broken. I learned that with my practicum. They're just like, hey, be who you are and don't be afraid of being broken, because guess what? We're all broken and we're all kind of failures at certain things. And like, God can come into that, and He comes into our weakness, and He makes us strong through our weakness, literally. Like, it is when we recognize that we're weak that He can come in and show us who He is. So I definitely learned that with practicum. Homemaking, like I said, through my mama, she just taught me so much about that, and I realize now it's a passion of mine. Never was before, but now it's like just having people part of my life and into my space is like, I didn't realize how rich it could be, and so she definitely taught that in community. And then finally, go for it. Learning to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, and just what that means, and just like I said, go with it. It speaks for itself. Finally, my experience coming home. So this has kind of been an experience of its own. I've really, really struggled coming home, and more than I thought I would. I knew I was going to have reverse culture shock, but I didn't really know what that meant or what it looked like. Oh yeah, obviously because it's Minnesota and it was really cold. That was it. Literally got off the plane and was like, oh my god, because it came back in like December, so it was like so cold after being in like on the equator. Anyways, so reverse culture shock is real. Sorry, that was like a really random side note. But reverse culture shock is real. And I didn't know what it would look like, but for me, this is what it looked like. I knew I was different, and I couldn't really put a finger on how. And I'm still at the stage where I'm like, I know that I'm different. I know that I'm changed. I know that my friendships are different. I know that my faith is different. Like, I know who Jesus is now, like, really in a real way. Like, I know that's different. I know. But what does this look like for my life? Going back into these relationships, trying to kind of fit back into the old box that I was in is impossible, and kind of figuring out what that will look like. And this was so hard, you guys. I struggled with depression. I still do. This was immediately upon coming home, I really felt isolated. I went to live with a friend in Idaho because I was thinking I'll just ease into culture and like not do J-term and just go live in the middle of the mountains, in the middle of nowhere, just kind of like thinking about things. Okay, not a good idea. It was too isolated, and I was like, I didn't have anyone to reach out to. I didn't have that community that I had in Uganda. I didn't have intimate relationships that I had back here. Everybody had done 4 months of life, and I wasn't there. And so depression was real, and it got really bad. There was points when I remember very clearly suicidal thoughts, and that was intense and terrifying. I was like, God, what is happening? Like, I thought that now that I believe in you, and like this is really real for me, this is not supposed to happen, and I should have like hope for the future. I was like hopeless. I remember just like I couldn't have a positive thought. I didn't talk. Like, I'm a very talkative person. Obviously, like I've been talking for like 30 minutes, and you guys are still here, thank you. But I couldn't talk to anyone. I couldn't relate to anyone, and that was really hard. And so I struggled. And so I came back to Bethel, and my friends have been really supportive. They're here today, which is cool. But just like having people to come back to and that who are willing to talk through some of these things was great, but I still like wasn't comfortable talking about them yet, if that makes sense. So I reached out to therapy, and I started meeting with a therapist on a regular bi-weekly basis, and that was extremely helpful. And just being able to talk through these things in depth was incredible. But recognizing my own like vulnerability in that was terrifying, and saying that I needed that was like really terrifying. And telling anyone that I was depressed was like pulling teeth. It was like, I don't really like. It's so much information that I don't want people to know, and you don't realize like how much of that will be true. But that was really hard. So. And then through that, I learned what helped me, and I learned the things that I needed to invest in back home, and that was music. I hadn't picked up an instrument in months, and realized that that was a big mistake. That is something I'm really passionate about. I hadn't ran in months, like, okay, not months, like a month, but like still, it was, I needed to invest in these things that are my priorities, and like school was becoming really stressful, and I realized like, I need to take a step back, figure out my priorities, and figure out what helps me. And finally, vulnerability, piece by piece, with my friends, learning that it's okay to be ugly real. And sometimes you don't want to do it all at once, but you just need to be okay with that. So yeah, that was my experience. If you have more questions, I can answer them now or after, or email me and we'll come talk. I do have these little things that have the books that we read and like a little description as to why you should read them because they're amazing, and as well as like the links to like Love My Enemies, the Rwanda thing, and then Poverty Incorporated, which is a documentary that talks about like what ways the West is kind of screwed up in helping the third world and how they can be better, and how like we as a community can actually reach out and help more. So if you want to know more, come talk to me. But yeah, thanks for listening, you guys. Right after that, does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Since it is such a different culture, as you mentioned, what were some things that really made you feel at home there?
Yeah. I think learning to have community and learning that, because it's so different than our culture back here. And so like back here I have my few individual friends who are very separate and from each other, but like I care about them and we have like lots of like deep relationships one-on-one. There, it's very communal. And so the way that they welcome me in immediately and were like, you're a part of our group now, learning to accept that and be okay with that and accept love genuinely was how, took 2 months before I was able to do that. And so, yeah, just their community really welcomed me. And yeah.
How has your relationship with God changed because of this trip?
Yeah. So like I said, going into it, I had a lot of doubt, and if anything, I've learned to quit looking so much at Christianity as a religion and started looking more at who Jesus is as a person. And learning that at the end of the day, church is going to be screwed up. There's going to be political problems in the church, and we're going to like have things we hate on, and like, oh, I feel so judged when I go to church, and like all this stuff that I was struggling with. But in reality, like, we're broken people, and we're broken people in the church, we're broken people out of the church, and learning to be okay with that and like accept that when going to church and like, hey, these are humans too, and I need to be real with them as I am, and I guess just my relationship with Christ has been more real just because it's been just me and him, and like, this is me, God, I am a flawed human, but you can do a lot with my life if I just give it to you and surrender it to you. So that's been huge. Yep.
Has your experience off campus played into a difference you see in how you are as a teacher?
Yeah, very much so. Just kind of understanding that everyone comes from different backgrounds, and the whole part about like not assuming about students, and that has played a massive role. And even just the experiences I had in front of a bunch of kids was really helpful. Get over like my fear of public speaking, which is huge. But yeah, mostly that. Just don't assume anything about kids. Give every single child an equal opportunity and chance at the success that they're capable of. Yep.
So you talked about having misperceptions of the people you were encountering. Did they have any misperceptions of you?
Yes. So this is actually a good question. Really funny. We also stayed in like rural Uganda for a little bit, like a week. So it actually like kind of made me angry at first, and then I realized how skewed my perceptions were coming in. So I'd like, okay, calm down, Rachel. Like, same but different. So I was like, one thing that someone said to me was like, so the reason why America has skyscrapers is because they've run out of like land, right? So everybody lives in skyscrapers. Well, no, not exactly. But also just like they were shocked that I could walk, and like they were like, this is in rural Uganda, so urban Uganda, a lot of these misconceptions have been, they don't have as many misconceptions. So it's kind of like rural America is kind of, I'm from rural America, so I can say this. Less, maybe culture? I don't know. That's a big generalization if I talk about that. But basically, like, learning, like, they just like, what was I going to say? Basically.
They were shocked you could walk.
Yes, thank you. They were shocked I could walk, and they were like, you guys, you actually move on your feet in America? I thought everything was like mopeds and cars and stuff. No. And then, but more in your urban areas, some of the misconceptions went a lot with media. And so like Netflix and shows and stuff like that, they assumed like that's kind of how we act, and that's how we are with each other, which is kind of funny because I think we even do that ourselves. Like, oh, that's how we think we should act. But anyways, so they had a lot of assumptions because of that. Anything else? Yeah.
What did you learn about America by leaving it?
I learned, this kind of goes along with the church thing too, not to be cynical, because we are very privileged and we have a lot of amazing things, but because of that, we have a great platform. And I learned that in America, we have a lot of problems, our education system, political system, all this stuff, but when compared to a lot of these peripheral countries, like, we have it so good. And so I learned just to be grateful for what we have, and that yes, America is a broken nation, but so is every nation on this earth, and God is working in that brokenness. Anything else? Alrighty, well, thanks so much, you guys.